Now, Lembit Opik is an all-round good egg. He is a hopeful for the Liberal Democrat nomination for the mayoralty of London. He was unexpectedly defeated in the general election, and the House of Commons is poorer for his absence. And he's joining me now here on The Week. Lembit, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you, and thank you for always being so generous with your observations as well, my good friend.
Absolutely. Now, Lembit, the Lib Dems may be on the edge of oblivion.
Well, in return for your kindness, I will, as ever, give you a straight and honest answer. I think that today was a very bad day for the Liberal Democrats, and it wasn't unforeseen. I'm sure that you could see it coming, looming in the mist. I certainly could. And the results were dreadful, frankly. The Conservatives rose high, amazingly making gains. Labour maybe could have done a bit better, but the Liberal Democrats crashed and burned in a way which is probably avoidable. And I would humbly suggest to my leadership that they need to look at image, policy, and differentiation from the Conservative Party, because I think a lot of left-leaning people who thought the Lib Dems were, the nice party, the party that really did care about the general public and so forth, felt a little bit betrayed, and we paid the price, as we did in the AV. I know you've got a different view on it yourself, but on the AV referendum too.
Well, the majority in the referendum, first of all, was absolutely crushing. And, of course, the real danger, for those of us who believe in real proportional representation, is that it has consolidated, galvanized the position of first past the post for the remainder of our lives.
You could well be right about the fact that we may not be able to return to this for a generation. If Labour was smart, and if Ed Miliband was smart, he'd first of all move the Labour Party towards the left, and secondly, he would offer some kind of a brokered arrangement for the Liberal Democrats, saying we will return to proper proportional representation. I know that you weren't too keen on AV, alternative vote. We don't need to go into the details of the actual methodology. There is a more pure system of proportional representation, and he could do that probably with some credibility. But as you rightly point out, the inference of the referendum was that it was to punish the Liberal Democrats.
Yes.
And
well, that's what, if you like, tipped the balance. For me, I voted no because the infinitesimal advance of AV from what we have now was outweighed by the fact that I want to break up this coalition. I don't want this dreadful, condemned coalition government to continue, and I want to encourage Liberal Democrat MPs, as I'm sure many are now contemplating, a life after this coalition.
A couple of thoughts on that, George. I would say, for me at least, the alternative vote where you number the candidates 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of just putting an X would have been progress, and I voted yes on that. But obviously, two-thirds of the country voted no, and in decisive numbers. I mean, we can't simply say it was a fluke. Just in terms of what you're saying also, though, the Lib Dems would agree with that second point. Lib Dems would say that if we had a truly proportionate system, then that would be a much better outcome. Frankly, I think in a truly, absolutely, properly proportional system, you'd have actually got elected in Scotland, and I'm sorry that you didn't, because you had a great value there.
Thank you. The real reason why the referendum was such a smashing defeat was because, as you say, it got caught up in other issues. There are millions of people in the country who feel that they were betrayed by a left-leaning Liberal Democrat campaign, who voted Liberal Democrat, only to discover that in exchange for not much more than a ministerial Montego, the Lib Dems have sold themselves to a group of multi-millionaire Thatcherites and are keeping them in power.
On a technical point, I think they use Priuses instead of Montegos now. But the point that you make there probably reflects a lot of public opinion in this country. Now, I did vote Lib Dem, and I'm not planning to jump ship anytime soon. But as you rightly say, and as the leadership need to recognise, lots of people, probably the majority of people who voted Liberal Democrat in the past, are left-leaning and probably libertarian. And what they see, especially from this group, the Orange Bookers, as they're called, a caucus within the Lib Dems, who tend to be, I think, rather to the right of myself and certainly far to the right of you. They had much less trouble making an arrangement with the Conservatives. Now, mathematically, in defence of the coalition, there was no other stable opportunity to form a government. But what I'm concerned about is the Conservatives in coalition still look like Conservatives. The Liberal Democrats in coalition, at least to the voting public, also look like Conservatives. And I think the leadership have to urgently learn the lesson that you cannot risk losing your identity without also losing your vote. And I'm saddened about that as somebody rather on the left of my own party.
Well, look, Lembit, you and I have both been in politics long enough to smell the wind, and when I saw Chris Huhne's comments, and knowing as I do, as you do, that he only narrowly lost to Nick Clegg in the Lib Dem leadership stakes, I smell a challenge coming, don't you?
I see Chris Huhne clearly marking his territory of ambition by the comments that he made, and I think it was I don't know this for sure, but I think it was he who threatened to resign from the cabinet of government on Sunday if it's a no vote. Now, Chris Huhne's already stood for the leadership twice, so you could be right. My advice to Chris, and I'm sure at least some of his supporters will be listening, is it's premature for him to use this opportunity to stand for the leadership. Ignores two facts. First of all, he's part of the same caucus. He's part of the Orange Book caucus that I mentioned before. Maybe we'll talk about that more in future. And it's not a caucus that I'm very comfortable with. And secondly, it looks like an attack on Clegg, which probably would close the ranks in Clegg's defence. Now, whether you like Clegg or whether you don't like Clegg, I think changing the leader is a process. I'm more interested in outcomes, and on this one, as you know from previous conversations, I would think the Liberal Democrats would do far better by repositioning themselves as left-wing, as libertarian, not necessarily breaking up the coalition, but by saying, look, you Tories, you've maintained your ethos and ambitions, but we Liberal Democrats, we will reassert ours as well. That's redistribution of wealth, a more libertarian agenda. If Chris thinks he can somehow launch a leadership election at this point, I think that's risky. I'm not even sure he was doing that, but he gave the impression of doing that, and that was probably unwise.
Now, finally, the mayoralty. When do we know who the Lib Dems are running for mayor?
Mr. Galloway, I wish I could tell you and your listeners. I just don't know. Every week that goes by, I'm looking for the timetable for the selection of the mayoral candidate. And to remind your listeners, I'm the only person who's been shortlisted as approved to apply to be the Lib Dem candidate. Nobody else has formally been approved yet.
No, but I think they're looking for somebody else. That's the meaning of the delay.
You might say that. I couldn't possibly comment, but I do hope that you might get a senior member of the leadership onto the programme and see if they can enlighten us all on this.
I'll see what we can do.
I can promise you that when the time comes, I will put my name forward, and I hope that I won't be corrupted into expedience. I hope I can be as free-speaking then as I am now, and I always am grateful to speak to your listeners, because when I meet them in the street, it shows that you provide a valuable service for free dialogue, and that's really what we need in this country, instead of the very grey politics that seems to have replaced what was a bit more sparky in the past.
Many thanks, Lembit Opik, former Member of Parliament, would-be Lib Dem nominee for the London mayoralty. 08717 223344. That's the number to call. The Week with me, George Galloway, only on TalkSport.